Welcome to K-Drama Cuts, where we discuss K-dramas in 20 minutes or less. This video will feature a military sci-fi drama called Duty After School. Watch the video and enjoy. Unidentified floating objects appeared in the sky all around the world, except for some areas in the polar regions in Russia. These purple spheres have been floating for about a year with no known reason. When they first arrived, the government took preemptive action, which only caused their numbers to multiply. Eventually, researchers concluded that the spheres were free of dangerous components. The world adapted to their presence, even reverting to ship travel as the primary mode of transportation over long distances. One day, a sphere fell at a military base, leaving the soldiers unprepared for such event. Company Commander Choi Yong-sik began shooting at the sphere out of frustration. But when it remained intact, they fired a cannon instead. 4 weeks later, at Sungjin High School, Class 3-2's homeroom teacher, Ms. Park, announced that early college admissions had been cancelled. This announcement drew confusion from the class, which was interrupted by a press briefing from Defense Minister Park Sang-min. The government issued a nationwide mobilization, requiring all high school seniors and those under 24 to be drafted in preparation for any potential sphere-related threats. To entice students to enlist, the government offered extra points toward their SAT scores. As the briefing concluded, military vehicles arrived at the school. A consent form was handed out for parents to sign that evening. Students who agreed would camp at the school for training, while those who refused would transition to remote learning. Everyone in Class 3-2 had their consent forms signed. They arrived at school with large bags and suitcases. Lieutenant Lee, the officer in charge of their class, entered and briefed the students about the training, which would take place after class. He appointed the class president, Yoo-jung, as senior private or the platoon leader, and Cheol as a clerk to be responsible for attendance and video logs. Lee then revealed that the two roles came with 3 bonus points each. On the other hand, an accumulation of 30 penalty points would result in discharge from the training and the loss of any earned bonus points. The students headed to their makeshift dormitories, where they met their other supervisors, Ja-yoon and Wonbin. On their first day of training, the students were issued personal firearms, followed by a series of drills. At night, Ilha, a known bully, was caught with a phone after Young-hoon, the class genius, reported him to Lieutenant Lee. The two nearly fought, so Lee punished them. They continued the fight outside, but Cheol arrived to break it up. Suddenly, a sphere dropped near them. Still angry from the fight, Ilha shoved Young-hoon, causing his body to hit the sphere. As Young-hoon stood up and turned, the sphere transformed into a creature, captured him, and then reverted back into a sphere. Cheol reached out, but Lieutenant Lee arrived just in time to stop him. Ms. Park confronted Lee for concealing the danger posed by the spheres, something he, of all people, knew, as he was the sole survivor of the first sphere that dropped. However, he told her that they had been ordered to stay silent to avoid causing panic. This frustrated Ms. Park, but with no other choice, she instructed Ilha and Cheol not to reveal the truth about the incident. Instead, they were to say that Young-hoon had simply gone home after injuring himself. They kept the sphere that had captured Young-hoon in an enclosure. Lieutenant Lee recalled the military's effort to develop a weapon to kill the spheres, which were depleted uranium bullets. However, due to a shortage of troops and ammunition, they had to recruit high school seniors. With 30 spheres now fallen, the public was warned to stay away. The students became more focused with each training session, voicing fewer complaints. After learning about the incident, the company commander ordered that the students be taught how to shoot. The students headed to the shooting range outside of school. As they walked, they noticed that the shops were closed and the streets were empty. They first observed the class ahead of them. The students became motivated after learning that anyone who performed well would earn 3 bonus points. Their classmate from abroad, Nara, stood out by hitting the bullseye with all 3 shots. On their way back, Lieutenant Lee noticed bullet holes on the walls and advised the students to take a short break while they checked the area. Temin and Hirek snuck off to a nearby store for a drink. When Ms. Park noticed they were missing, she and Yoo-jung searched for them. They stumbled upon dismembered bodies of the class before them, which alerted the others. As Ms. Park investigated further, small purple creatures appeared and she began shooting at them. One creature reached her, and she was killed, causing the students to panic and scatter. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Lee and Wonbin found a sphere in an impact crater. Hearing the gunshots, they rushed to the students' aid and managed to gather the students to safety. However, they also lost Ja-yoon in the process. They returned to school, grieving the ones they had lost. The students begged to go home, no longer caring about the SATs. They agreed that they should stay together no matter what, whether they stayed or left. They submitted a petition requesting that all students be sent home. However, Lieutenant Lee refused, explaining that it wasn't safe outside and that even their homes could be attacked by the spheres. He also mentioned that the government had issued a nationwide evacuation, so their families wouldn't be expecting them back home. Lee prompted that they were now soldiers at war. The students trained at night, even against their will, but now with purpose. They didn't believe their parents had gone to a shelter. They wanted to trust the platoon commander, but they no longer trusted anyone. They agreed to form a small unit to check their nearby homes. The unit, composing of Cheol, Deokjung, Yongshin, and Jangsu, the class vice president, sneaked out, but were caught and punished. Lieutenant Lee warned that anyone who left without permission would be treated as a deserter and could be executed by order. As a revolt, their class spread the news and secrets about the spheres to other students. Their schoolmates were in turmoil and said they would follow their class's lead. They staged a protest, erupting chaos until a sphere dropped. It released creatures that attacked them. Another sphere fell, then another. The little spheres scattered, killing many, including their classmate, Wudek. More spheres continued to drop, one landing right at the entrance, injuring Soyeon. The students blocked the entrance and returned to their classrooms, where they were told to gear up. As they headed to the vehicles, Inye, with a sprained ankle, couldn't keep up and was killed. The group split into two, with each car taking a different route heading to a camp located at Mount Soak. The first car, carrying none of their supervisors, tipped over. A sphere got inside, killing the driver. The students fired their guns at the sphere until they ran out of ammo. Noticing fewer spheres in the sky, they assumed it was because the area was less populated. Soyeon's condition worsened, alarming them. Stranded in an unfamiliar place, they teamed up in pairs to search for shelter. The second car arrived safely at the camp, only to find many dead bodies. They learned the first car hadn't arrived, which worried them. Lieutenant Lee requested a vehicle from their commander to search for the others, but his request was denied. Undeterred, he pursued his plan, even if it meant his death. With Wonbin's help, they acquired a vehicle. Lee insisted on going alone, but the students, except for Yongsu, the class nerd, were eager to find the others, so they joined him. Meanwhile, Cheol found a place to stay. Yongshin, the group leader, cleverly marked the vehicle with an arrow to show their direction. Upon arrival, they treated Soyeon. While searching for medicine, Junhee found a packet of ramen, which she secretly ate alone. It was then that she spotted a sphere, which the others also saw. They quickly went inside and locked themselves in, but the sphere found a way in through the ventilation. This split the group into two rooms, which they secured. The sphere moved around the house, then went silent after seemingly calculating the students' next move. Yongshin stated that they knew nothing about the spheres, except that they react to sounds. Soyeon's condition worsened, and Hirek bluntly suggested they should just leave with the truck in the garage. Despite none of them knowing how to drive, Cheol entertained the idea. He slipped through the broken window, informed the others in the other room of the plan, and headed to the garage to grab a tool to free them. The sphere sensed his movement and followed, but Cheol noticed just in time. He ran back, alerting the others. They quickly opened the main door to let him in, and managed to lock themselves in their rooms again. With Cheol now in the other room with a bolt cutter, they outwitted the sphere by playing a movie on the TV to create noise, making it believe they were still inside. However, the ruse didn't last long, and the sphere soon discovered their escape. The others made their way to the garage while Temin and Suchil dealt with the sphere. The two followed, closing the garage behind them. While searching for keys, they saw the sphere trying to break in. With time running out, Yongshin suggested someone should lure the sphere while the others escaped in the truck. The person would be chosen by whoever picked the shortest stick. Hirek drew the shortest stick, but sensing his fear, Jengsoon broke his and volunteered instead. He immediately began luring the sphere, allowing the truck driven by Soyoon, whose family apparently ran a driving school, to escape and leave him behind. When the group came to a stop, they noticed Hirek missing. It turned out he had stayed behind to help Jengsoon, saving him just as the sphere was about to kill him. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Lee and the rest of the class arrived at the first car's location, where they faced a swarm of spheres. Later, the two groups reunited and headed back to the camp. The class was complete, including Yongsu, who had stayed at the camp. Ilha criticized him for being selfish, saying he was only in training for the bonus points and not for them. However, Wonbin pointed out that Yongsu had been worried the whole time and had even prepared the sleeping tents. Lieutenant Lee faced the commander and received just a warning, as he had brought the students to safety after all. The students changed into soldier uniforms as they became official reservists. An operational meeting revealed that most medium spheres and 20% of small spheres had dropped, killing 50% of their soldiers. The spheres were mostly in cities, feeding on humans, and were weak against the cold. The UN was developing cryogenic weapons, but the commander argued they couldn't wait and decided to use the student reserve forces for cleanup operations. The students, upset to receive the mission just as they were about to be discharged, were informed that at 0700 hours the following day, they would eliminate all spheres on their way to a shelter in Mesongchi. They were being sent out first because they were the largest group. Yongsu, focused on the SATs, asked about them. The commander assured him they would take the test as scheduled, with bonus points granted, and could meet their families afterward. The students were so anxious about the mission that they couldn't eat or sleep. Their anxiety grew when they were asked to write a soldier's will. To ease her classmates' worry, Yujin suggested it was just a formality, but the class knew better. Empathetic to their distress, Lieutenant Lee and Wonbin visited the students, trying to lighten the mood. Lee told them he couldn't say when the war would end, but he promised to fight until the end, making sure no one would be hurt. Before heading out, they were given sphere detectors, which could detect spheres within a 1-kilometer radius in open areas and 500 to 700 meters in cities and villages. In Riots, they abandoned their trucks due to roadblocks and proceeded on foot. After detecting spheres, Lieutenant Lee lured them out, and they killed some, but the spheres hid, forcing the group to search in pairs. They found 3 survivors. They eventually reached Mesongchi's shelter number 8, where they found no spheres nor survivors, only bodies to identify. The Riots survivors were reservists from Hamel High School sent to deliver supplies to the shelter. One of them, Yunso, overwhelmed by grief, had a meltdown that resulted in Wonbin getting shot. Lieutenant Lee informed the students they would withdraw in the morning, unable to guarantee their safety. The students worried about Lee's disobedience and feared for his punishment, while Yongsu was concerned about losing SAT bonus points, and Junhee feared not being sent back to their parents. Yongshin reminded them to be thankful for being pulled from the dangerous situation. Lieutenant Lee and Wonbin discussed and shared how impressed they are of how the kids have matured so fast. On night watch, Nara and Cheol spotted spheres 2 kilometers away, out of range of the detectors. They saw smaller spheres gathering around a boss sphere, which seemed to communicate with a giant sphere overhead. They suspected the spheres were planning their next target, which they believed to be the small-sized shelter in the area. Lieutenant Lee confirmed their withdrawal and assured them they'd return with a better plan. The students, however, feared the shelter might be attacked before backup arrived, and if they withdrew, another group would just be sent in their place, and another after that. Lee respected their decision. The next morning, the plan was to gather the spheres at Mesongshi University and eliminate them all at once, as taking them out one by one would be too dangerous. They created uranium explosives by combining depleted uranium with the dynamites they had found. They arrived at the university with the plan to restore power, install explosives, seal all doors, and regroup at the Salbong building. One unit stayed on the said building's rooftop to monitor the spheres and report anything unusual. Soyeon mentioned smelling the spheres as they had a peculiar scent. From the rooftop, Nara saw the spheres began moving toward the shelter. Suchul alerted Lieutenant Lee, who realized the spheres would head their way in 10 minutes if they lured them now. The students were told to wrap up their tasks in 10 minutes. They used a siren and car alarms to lure the spheres, while others rushed to finish the installations. With the spheres closing in, Lieutenant Lee decided to stay behind to finish the task, sending the students out with Wonbin. Reluctantly, the students left. By the time they reached the Salbong building, the spheres had trapped Lieutenant Lee in the main building. Though he had completed the installation, injured and out of ammo, it seemed impossible for him to escape. Accepting his fate, Lieutenant Lee ordered the team to detonate the explosives, urging them to act or they would all die. Soyeon reminded him of his promise, and Lieutenant Lee, apologizing, told them how proud he was of them. He begged them not to let him die in vain and ordered Wonbin to detonate the explosives, which Yoojung bravely did. A month had passed, and the students were still fighting the spheres. Their skills had greatly improved, and they had become so fearless that they now looked undeniably cool. The SATs were postponed for a month, which relieved Yongsu. They made the Yongdu service area their base camp, where they established a system for managing food and operations and created a memorial for the fallen. With no platoon commander, Jangsu and Yoojung led the group. Each day, a search team gathered supplies while a raid team dealt with the spheres. Every night, they voted on whether to stay or leave, and the majority chose to stay. Yangshin pointed out that leaving would still be dangerous due to their broken radio and limited intel. Temin suggested searching for radio parts at a nearby penitentiary. The next day, the teams were assigned. Raiders would find radio parts, the search team would gather medical supplies, and a few would guard the camp. The raiding team arrived at the penitentiary and began searching for radio parts when they heard a sound and gathered. They initially thought it was spheres, but realized it was an SOS call and considered the possibility of survivors. Following the sound, they discovered prisoners locked in the basement. Despite prisoners' demands to be freed, the group decided not to release them. Esol, however, felt sympathy for one prisoner who wanted to contact his mother. While the team continued their mission, Esol returned to the prisoner and entered his cell, where the prisoner turned aggressive. The group heard a loud noise and rushed back, finding Esol surrounded. They locked the prisoners out with Esol inside. One prisoner threatened her, and the group responded by aiming their weapons. Esol urged them to leave, apologizing for the situation. As the prisoners acted aggressively, the group pushed back and they were given 10 minutes to discuss. During their discussion, the team detected 4 spheres approaching. With no time to waste, they decided to release the prisoners. When they returned, the criminals initially noticed Hirak and Temin missing, but they later ignored. The group lowered their weapons and opened the gate, allowing the prisoners to break out. Little did the criminals know, the rifles left behind were empty. The group used their knowledge of the spheres to their advantage and even warned Esol beforehand. Hirak and Temin led the spheres to the criminals, taking them out one by one. The group eventually reached Esol, and only 2 criminals remained. One attacked Esol and Bora, but the other shot him. The remaining criminal, claiming the spheres were cleansing humanity, backed down and walked away. Junhee, Hana and Dukjung were slacking off at the base camp when Hana noticed something odd about the voting. She had asked many to vote to leave, but the results always favored staying. Junhee suggested they might have lied, but Hana wasn't convinced. The 3 then encountered strangers who turned out to be students from a science high school heading to Seoul. They explained that with the SATs cancelled, the operation was no longer necessary for them. The trio was shocked and mentioned that their radio was broken. The visitors clarified that while the SATs were cancelled, the operation continued, with bonus points applied to next year's exam. Dukjung planned to tell the others to just leave for home. When he asked to borrow a walkie-talkie, the students said theirs was left with classmates who stayed behind. A student, however, offered to fix their radio. Upon inspection, they found the circuit board missing 2 parts, which the student revealed could only have been removed intentionally. The students bid farewell, suggesting that their unit should reconsider their stance. They advised them to be careful and stay alive. Left with doubts about who could be behind this, the 3 chose to keep their suspicions to themselves first, choosing not to stir up conflict. The search team arrived at the hospital and collected medicines from the dispensary. Chiol overheard an argument by the stairs and found Suchul, who claimed to be alone. The group, thrilled with the supplies and ammo they had gathered, decided to go back for more. Soon after, they heard gunshots and saw Suchul fall from the building. As they gathered around, Suni found ballots in Suchul's pocket. It didn't make sense that Suchul would rig the ballots. Suni expressed her frustration, accusing Suchul, which angered Ilha. Yongsu suggested it might have been suicide, but Chiol remembered the argument he had overheard earlier. The raid team returned, and Dukjung asked if they found radio parts, which only frustrated the group. The search team also came back, bringing along Suchul's body. The group held a burial and mourned their loss. Chiol presented the ballots Suchul had, which contained dissenting votes, and confronted Yoojung about it. This raised suspicions among the group, and they demanded answers about Suchul's death. and the rigged votes. Cheol mentioned the argument he overheard, which caused an uproar until Ilha stepped forward and confessed that he and Suchol were behind the rigging. When asked why, Jun connected the dots and revealed that it was because the SATs had been cancelled. He said they learned it from the science high school students who visited their camp earlier. Ilha explained that they had received the news of the SATs being cancelled but were advised to continue the operation. Initially, they were scared and wanted to leave, but their fear turned into anger. Fed up with the adults' manipulation, Suchol broke the radio. Ilha said they planned to keep it a secret until they overheard Yujung and Jiangsu's plan to rig the votes. Yujung and Jiangsu then admitted their involvement. Yujung explained that as more people voted to leave, she couldn't let them be put in danger. She believed staying put was safer with fewer spheres in the area and enough supplies to last. Reflecting on Lieutenant Li's words about sticking together, Yujung believed revealing the truth about the SATs would have made everyone scatter. She wanted them to stick together to survive, as no one else was coming for them. To the adults, they were just tools and had no intention of protecting them. After their confession, Jun commented they could have been honest from the start. Laura joined in, saying no one really cared about the SATs. Hirek then asked if that was why they killed Suchol, which deeply offended Ilha. The three felt regretful, but the others believed it was too late to seek their understanding. Soyun went on with saying that day proved to them that humans were scarier than the spheres. The news of the SATs being cancelled devastated Yongsu, as he had pinned all his hopes on the SATs to secure a future for himself and his struggling family. The next day, they left camp for Seoul, with 100 kilometers still to go after 2 days of walking. Upon reaching the port, they found a bus surrounded by dead bodies, which Junhee, Jung, and Hana recognized as the students who had visited their camp. Yongsu insisted they turn back and continue the operation, still fixated on the SATs and hoping his extra points could get him into Seoul National University. The group ignored him and kept walking. By night, they reached an amusement park, where they decided to rest. Soyun and Yongshin went to search for a generator. Yujung, Jiangsu, and Ilha, still feeling guilty, kept their distance from the others. While the rest of the group ate, they acknowledged the three's actions. Jung reflected on the science high school students they had met, realizing that if they had separated, they could have shared the same fate. They now understood that Yujung and Jiangsu had been trying to keep the group together. They finally invited the three to join them. As they shared regrets about not enjoying the amusement park with the whole class before everything happened, the power came on. With no spheres around, they decided to take a break and enjoy the rides. Yongsu, however, was upset by the others' lightheartedness and criticized them for having fun. Jiangsu urged him to join the group and not worry about the SATs, suggesting he think of it as just another year of studying. This irritated Yongsu, who felt he didn't have the luxury of taking life easy. Cheol saw Ilha sitting alone in the corner, consumed by guilt over the disagreement he had with Suchol. He blamed himself for Suchol's and Yonghoon's deaths. However, Cheol reassured him that the spheres were responsible, not him. The group gathered to take photos at the booth, preparing for one final group shot when Cheol noticed a video of Suchol on his camera, apologizing for breaking their radio. In the footage, they saw that Suchol had actually been attacked by spheres, causing his fall. Meanwhile, Yongsu stumbled upon a newspaper stating that the SATs would proceed as scheduled. Jiangsu joined Soyeon at the beach, and Yongsu misinterpreted the situation, thinking they were kissing. He approached Soyeon, showing her the newspaper, only for her to point out that it was from an older date. Yongsu turned aggressive, questioning her trust in him, and in a fit of rage, he pushed Soyeon, knocking her unconscious. Initially panicking, he became more erratic and tried to take advantage of her. Ilha witnessed this and intervened, waking Soyeon. Yongsu threatened to kill Ilha if he spoke out. Ilha retaliated, and the two ended up pointing their rifles at each other. Shots rang out, and the others arrived to find Soyeon unconscious, with blood on the ground. Yongsu claimed a sphere had attacked them, spinning a story that Soyeon had collapsed and that a sphere was trying to take her when Ilha intervened. He said the sphere dragged Ilha into the water, and he might be gone by now. As they detected spheres approaching, the group had no time to wait and fled the park, leaving Ilha behind. The rain poured as Yongsu wrestled with guilt, fearing Soyeon would remember everything and expose the truth. The group made it to a school, where the sphere detector showed no signs of spheres. They took shelter. The group grew concerned about Ilha, unable to believe he was attacked by a sphere when the detector showed no signs of them nearby. Yongsu went outside to reflect on his actions, trying to convince himself that what he did was self-defense and justified. He blamed Soyeon, claiming she had been looking down on him for years. As he wrestled with his thoughts, he began to hallucinate, seeing Ilha before him. Jiangsu asked Soyeon about what really happened. She recalled noticing Yongsu's strange behavior and remembering Ilha's presence when she woke up. She didn't recall any spheres appearing. Overhearing them, Yongsu snapped. Inside the classroom, an illusion of spheres attacking them played out, but it was Yongsu who was ultimately responsible for the deaths, including his own. Only Hana, Esol, Nara, and Cheol survived. 2 years later, most spheres were eradicated. Cheol left the exam room in the middle of taking the SAT. He wondered if the bonus points truly mattered, because for him, the warmth of his friends was all that remained. They had failed to protect each other, and that was the end of their story. To help this channel grow, please like this video and subscribe. Hit the notification bell to be updated for the next upload. See you. Stay safe.